Okay, in the last lesson we looked at chord and secant. Here we're going to take a look at tangent. So we already know what a tangent is, and you can see if we're looking at this diagram here, we do have two tangents, and they're intersecting at a point outside the circle. So if you have two tangents that intersect outside of a circle, then the measure of the angle formed is equal to 1/2 of the difference between the measures of the intercepted arcs. So you'll notice when you look at this formula here that that formula is almost identical to the secant formula that we looked at. And that secant was also, it was two different, in that case, secants that were intersecting outside of the circle. And anytime that you have something intersecting outside of the circle, like a tangent, like two tangents, or like two secants, or like a secant and a tangent, then the formula will always involve the difference of the two arcs. Rather than, if you recall, when we looked at the chord angle measure formula, that involved the sum of the two arcs. Well, that was chord, which was two chords that were intersecting inside a circle. So that's how you can kind of keep it straight. If they're intersecting inside the circle, then it'll be the sum of the arcs divided by 2 or times 1/2. If it's something that's intersecting outside of the circle, then the measure of that angle that's created there will be equal to 1/2 of the difference between the larger arc minus the smaller arc, or the major arc minus the minor arc. So we're going to see how this formula works here. So angle P, we're talking about this angle up top. That's the angle that's created from those exterior items, in this case, the two tangents. So the measure of that angle is going to be equal to this major arc, the difference between that and this minor arc. Those are the two arcs that are intercepted when those two tangents intersect. So let's see how that works with an example. So the measure of arc MP is 100 degrees. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that. If my pen will decide to work here, I'll just put it over here. 100 degrees is that arc. And we're supposed to find the measure of angle R. Okay, so we do have an angle that's created outside of the circle where the tangents intersect. So the first thing I'm going to do before I go ahead and use the formula is I'm going to figure out what the measure of this major arc. I'll highlight it here. So this major arc, the red and the purple arc, are the intercepted arcs that are created when those two tangents intersect. So I have to figure out what the measure of that red arc is, measurement of arc MAP, before I can find the difference between the major arc and the minor arc. So I'm going to take the whole total of the whole circle, which is 360, and I'm going to subtract the 100, which is arc MP, and that's going to give me 260, which is arc MAP. Okay, so now that I know that, now I can substitute everything I know into the formula and get my final answer. So the measure of angle R is going to be equal to 1/2 the difference between the larger arc, 260, minus, and the smaller arc, 100. So when I do that, the measure of angle R is 1/2 of 260 minus 100 is 160, and 1/2 of 160 is 80, and these are degrees that we're talking about. So the measure of angle R is 80 degrees. Okay. moving along. So that was secant, secant. Now let's take a look at a secant, one secant and one tangent intersecting. Now again, they're intersecting outside of the circle. So anytime that they're intersecting outside the circle, we're going to have pretty much the same formula. So the angle, that angle that's on the outside, is half the difference between the larger arc and the smaller arc. And the two of those together make up where the points where the tangent and the secant come together or intersect. So let's see how that works in an example here. So JH, I'm going to fill that in, is 100. And KH is 60. So first of all, if JH is 100 and KH is 60, that's 160 total. So I can get JK by subtracting 360 minus the 160 that we currently have, which is going to give me 200 degrees is the measure of arc JK. So now I have enough information to substitute into the formula. So I'm looking for F, which is right there. So the measure of angle F is going to be equal to 1/2 of the larger arc, which is JK, which is 200, minus the smaller arc here, which is 60. And when I subtract 200 minus 60, I get 140 degrees. So I'm taking half of that, which is 70 degrees. So the measure of angle F is 70 degrees. Okay, so let's look at one more example here. So this example is very similar, except for we have some algebra involved. So I do still see, though, that I have this smaller arc, I have this angle that's on the outside, and I have this larger arc. So I'm going to set up my expression, but let me first fill in what I know. So angle F is 2x, this one here is 2x minus 10 degrees. KH is 50 degrees, and JK is 3x plus 70 degrees. So the two arcs that I need to use in the formula, we already have both of that information filled in. So we're going to use that in combination with the angle measure. So the measure of angle F is equal to half of the bigger, which is 3x plus 70. And I'm going to subtract the smaller, which is 50. So the measure of angle F we know is 2x minus 10. So that equals half of, I'm going to simplify this, I have 3x plus 70 minus, does that say 3x plus 70? I can't even read my own writing. Minus 50. So 70 minus 50 is 20, so 3x plus 20. So to get rid of that half, we know from doing other problems, we're going to multiply both sides by 2. So when I multiply 1/2 by 2, they cancel each other out, and I just have what was on the right-hand side, 3x plus 20. And I'm going to distribute that 2 on the left to both terms, so that gives me 4x minus 20. So next I'm going to subtract 3x and add 20 to both sides, which gives me x is equal to 40, and these are degrees. Now I didn't answer the question though, so it says find the measure of angle F. So F is, angle F is equal to 2x minus 10, so 2 times 40, minus 10 is going to give me 80 minus 10, which is 70 degrees. So the measure of angle F is 70 degrees. Okay. So next you need to try pages 25 to 26, problems 2 through 10 evens, and 13 through 16 in your packet to get more practice on problems similar to these.